Welcome to VLAN Network. This is session 3 data storage management on data security. In this session, we are going to cover topics introduction, least privilege, defense in depth, perimeter defense, firewalls, authentication and access control, two-factor and multi-factor authentication, user versus host authentication, encryption, and attack. As in previous session we have studied about the data protection and why we need to prevent data loss. Now it is necessary to know about the how to can security to be maintained here. Here in the security, that's the basic concept, like what it say, that it is important to understand this language because it's apply on to protection of the data and protecting system from intruder that reduce the chance that data will be destroyed and stolen. So the system security must be part of data protection strategy. Next we are going to discuss about some least privileges. That privilege refer to the amount of access any user, host or processor that should have to system resources. So it always best to give just the least amount of access possible to accomplish the required task. And if a server need to see data, only one disk is in a large array. So it should be restricted to read access of that one disk. That means have the least privilege. You have less number of the user are accessible for the data, and like the host and the processor should be very the system resources. That's the way through which the user can interact, and the possibly when they use here to for some back they make it highly required and the user use it. So it's the security posture here. All security plan have a posture or the philosophy about security. So the posture that determines approach to security throughout the organization. That the two most common posture are referred here are like D and EY and allow, deny and allow. What is here the basic meaning of deny and allow? I would like to first hear. If the default deny, if something is not explicitly allowed, so it is immediately denied. The default action for all security operation is disallowed access to the resources, and least privilege encompasses default deny. This is a more secure posture, and default allow is the opposite. So it assumes that all things are allowed unless specifically denied. So systems are completely open except for the specific instance where the resource is limited or closed. Of that end user find default allow more convenient, and if default deny is still, then better practice the spiked for limitation in place to end user. I hope it will be very clear to deny and allow. Next we will going to discuss about defense in the depth. That defense refer to many layers of defenses that attacker must that is penetrate to gain the objective. And next about in computer system security, that defense refer to the layer of security and detection system that inhibit a hacker from gaining the access to corporate system and data. Basically, why all this can be here to sign that in a well-designed system that intruder first need to penetrate network parameter. The defense gain access to the network, then they must gain access to host or network, and finally they have to penetrate the storage system defense to gain access or to damage data. So this concept by the military of this science, you can say here. So that is called here by the defense in the depth. That's why the military sense comes from here, from the attacker. Simply about the military, that they protect us from the attacker. So similarly, we need to protect here in our data from depth of the layer. How to can make protect. Next, there are some parameter of the defense are here. Parameter defense are designed in order to attack from the outside from the network and prevent from the internet. This goal is to keep attacker from gaining access to interior corporate network. And beside protection, network from interior parameter defense that include the ability to about the attacks. But when they are successful or not, this give the system security, personal that ability to attack the attacker and protect interior system from the future harms. So it very clear to know how to make the future from the harm. And the firewall may be used. We will tell about the next slide about firewall. Here is some primary method for protecting our corporate or some home network from the intruder in the firewall. That's the firewall basic term. I hope you all of the listen, and the only system are also here for protecting your data from the outside attacker. That is sometime many of the time you listen about this word and you seen in your antivirus system also that protect your system. So the firewall are designed to examine traffic as it comes in and deny the entry to those who do not have access right to the system. So there are the different type of firewall design. Most combine several methodology to protect the inner network from harm, and the most common functions for firewall are proxy service like packet filtering and network address translation. Like packet filtering that admit or denies the traffic attempting to access the network based on the defense rule, the predefined rule. And the common version of protecting filtering is the port blocking, and in which all traffics to particularly that's to say you can say TCP/IP port is the block to all external connections. And host is firewall common in home and the small business situations. So that use this method to protect individual desktop and computer. Next is about the host and application defense. What is the here about the host and application defense about? Host security is usually accomplished by ensuring that a person or process that requests resources has right to those resources, and verifying the identity of a host, group, person or process to some degree of confidence. That is called authentication. That is authentication. We have already know about the person to whom we are allowing to access the data, but we are ensuring the person who are requesting for accessing our data. So that's verify and identify the host, group, person and the particular to whom we are allowed to access the data. So here is some authentication allow for access control to be implemented to a particular level. There is some level can be defined. If you don't want to whole data can be accessed by the user, you can make here the layers to which the user can access. So it can access about your limited but not all data. So that implemented a particular level, and this access control then limit the access to resources according to the right granted and by the system administrator, application or policies. Next about the authentication and access control here, that is able to verify, identify with some degree and confidence. It is based on something you have or know. That computer authentication provides method of ensuring that person requesting access to the resource is entitled or to it within some degree of confidence. That depending on the security need of an organization, authentication may take many forms. That some are like we can say username and password, smart card, biometrics that's you have used in your daily life about the need for authentication, but this is not the full of the proof of courses like it ID may be forgetted. Even if it is not, then it only identify the person as being that person. It cannot determine whether that person means to do harm. That's I know I have studied some of this authentication and the two-factor and multi-factor authentication can be seen. But one more thing about I would like to tell you about smart card and the biometrics. That's if you don't know, there is some common username and password combination. I hope you have studied in your daily life many times that you enter the password. So it sometimes takes you some alphanumeric password through which no one can easily hack your password. And you can say many of them can make some guess. Yes, this can be your password. They take your name, your contact number. Sometimes the password is taken that way that like some digits, character, as well as symbols should be included in your password through which no one can easily identify. So the most common of this is the username and password combination. It is easy to manage and understand. It is only used as secured as a password. Password can be found out and guessed or discovered through the use of program and containing dictionaries of common password. Most security professionals suggest that password be changed on a regular basis to reduce the risk that an attacker will guess or pioneer the password, like smart card, dongles, and similar device that require a physical hand to be present to access your computer and attach resources. That some biometrics are used for the biological markers for determine identity. It's very strong security because it's difficult to fake biology. You make some time thumb impression here. That's make your some lines on your finger. That is the range of the technology that have used for over the year, and depending on the type of access required here. Biometric has been deployed extensively in the ensuring physical security, especially handprint, reader, and retina scanners. For individual computer, thumbprint would have the popular, Next we have two-factor and multi-factor authentication. About two-factor, multi-factor authentication that combine more than one form of authentication to create a more secure environment. A password by itself may not be secure, but combined with the smart card, it much more so. Is it always best to combine different types of authentication method? An example of the password and smart card, it combines something the user with something she knows. Of course, if the user tapes the password to the bottom of the smart card or card reader, the system is useless. That's always best to combine different types of authentication method. For example, password and the smart card, it combines something the user has with something she knows. That's password. And the next is about user versus host authentication. There are many levels to which authentication can occur. There are two types of authentication commonly used: user level and host level. User level authentication that verify the identifier of a person or process. Host level authentication verify particular host computer. Some key issue with the host authentication that forces access control to implement it, and a very high level. If attacker is able to gain any level of access to the host, so he is likely to be able to access all available resources, and his authentication is stronger than allow access to confine to individual people and the process. Next we will discuss about the encryption. That's a very good way to protect your data over the network. Encryption is encoding of data so that a plain text is transformed into something intelligible. unintelligible that called ciphertext. You write on the network some text format that you can easily understand, but when it's transferred over the network, it changes some symbol kind of information. Like if someone hack it from the network, if it reads this data, but it's not clearly understandable basically what you have written, so it's nothing to use to hack it. So that is encryption, in which we call in short that is ciphertext. But at the destination when the data is reached, it again come in the normal text that is to be readable by the user. So that is gender that unless of an untutor and this is transformation become about by combining the data with the key that is known on the sending and receiving party. And the more about here, that's the principal method of encryption that we use today. First is the private key encryption, that is called symmetrical encryption, which is a method both parties have to some key and use to encode and decode data. That advantage of this method is to speed, but there is challenge in ensuring that the key are distributed safely. Second method is called asymmetrical encryption. This method uses a public known key. The receiver then decodes the ciphertext that using a key that is known only to the receiver, but that matches the public key. So in this way, anyone can send encoded text to the receiver, but only the receiver can decrypt it. So that often slow. Then private key encryption. This method solves the problem of the key distribution. So no one can decode the text except the intended receiver. That's the good brief of the encryption over the network. Next is we have discussed this. Next are the typical attack. Some some would say that there is no such thing that as the typical attack that is unique, and on some level this is the truth, but certain type of attack are more common. That is different type of attack can be allowed, like denial of the services and exploiting programming error. But I would like to tell here more about the denial of the services, like DOS. In short, we say denial of service, like the DOS, that attack to one of the most common launched across the internet. So these attacks are not meant to damage system or steal data, but instead they seek to delay the use of the system. Some common methods for performing that is denial of service and the attack are overload a host or network interface that cause system application that crash or fill up the memory. It's about exploiting program error, that are a lot of programming error that create security holes, but the two most frequent are the buffer overruns and the more exception handling. So buffer overruns happen when the programmer has neglected to place boundary that check around an input buffer, and the attacker then send input to the program and exceed the size of allocated memory for the buffer. So the extra data is actually executable code that is then placed on the system and the stack and the run. I hope it will be very clear about the typical attack. This is the exercise that you can do it by yourself, that what do you mean by encryption, and explain the authentication and access control. This is all about today's session. We are winding up here. Thank you so much. Happy learning. We learn.